The first alien ship appeared on a clear Tuesday morning. It materialized above Beijing, a massive dark silhouette that blocked the sun. By afternoon, similar vessels hovered over every major city on Earth. Communications worldwide stuttered and failed as unknown signals saturated the airwaves. Dr. Kim stood silent in the United Nations emergency chamber, her research notes clutched tightly in trembling hands. As Earth's leading xenolinguist, she had spent decades preparing for this moment. Now that it had arrived, a cold dread filled her stomach. "They're scanning our entire infrastructure," reported Admiral Park, his weathered face illuminated by the glow of emergency lighting. "Power grids, communication networks, defense systems. They're mapping everything." The room fell silent as the main screen flickered to life. The being that appeared was tall and vaguely reptilian, with iridescent scales that caught the light. When it spoke, the words came through in perfect English. "We are the Galactic Hegemony. Your world is now under our protection and authority. Your leaders will present themselves to receive instruction." President Yoon stepped forward. "We welcome peaceful contact, but Earth is a sovereign world." The alien interrupted. "Sovereignty is earned through advancement. Your species has achieved nuclear capability and primitive space travel. This qualifies you for protectorate status, not equal standing." The negotiations lasted 3 days. The hegemony representatives displayed neither cruelty nor compassion, only cold efficiency. They explained that Earth would provide resources and labor. In exchange, the hegemony would prevent other galactic powers from exploiting the planet and would share limited technologies. "This is colonization, not alliance," Dr. Kim whispered to Admiral Park as they left the fourth session. "They see us as primitives to be managed." "Then we make them see differently," the Admiral replied quietly. On the 5th day, Earth's representatives attempted to propose alternative terms. The hegemony delegate tilted its head in what they would later recognize as a gesture of annoyance. "Your position is noted but irrelevant. We have allowed this discussion as courtesy, not negotiation." President Yoon stood firm. "Then perhaps we need to demonstrate that humans are not to be." The world's screens simultaneously displayed the Lunar Research Outpost, home to 300 of Earth's brightest minds. Without warning, the entire station glowed bright blue, then vanished. Sensors confirmed, not destroyed, simply gone, transported elsewhere. "A demonstration," said the hegemony representative. "Those scientists are unharmed and relocated to a hegemony research facility. They will be well treated as valuable resources. This discussion is concluded." Earth surrendered formally the next day. The first year of hegemony rule seemed benign. They established outposts rather than colonies, requested resources rather than seized them, and shared medical technology that cured several diseases. Some humans embraced the new order, seeing the aliens as benevolent advanced beings guiding humanity forward. Dr. Kim knew better. She documented the patterns emerging. Strategic minds disappearing into special opportunity programs off-world, historical and cultural artifacts collected for preservation, resource extraction increasing beyond sustainable levels. "They're systematic," she explained during a secret meeting held in an abandoned subway tunnel beneath Seoul. "They don't conquer through violence when possible. They extract value slowly, like a parasite that doesn't wish to kill its host too quickly." Admiral Park nodded grimly. "Intelligence suggests they've done this to hundreds of worlds. Those that resisted openly were simply sterilized and mined for resources." "Then we don't resist openly," said General Zhou, her face half hidden in shadow. "We comply, adapt, and prepare." The plan formed quietly. While Earth's official leaders maintained the appearance of cooperation, a shadow initiative took shape. The Terran Defense Initiative brought together military strategists, scientists, and engineers from every nation. Old conflicts were set aside in the face of extinction. Underground facilities expanded beneath the Pacific Ocean, hidden from hegemony sensors by a combination of natural interference and clever technological masking. The aliens rarely bothered monitoring the deepest oceans, considering them inefficient for resource extraction. By the third year, the pattern of exploitation accelerated. Entire forest regions were harvested for rare biological compounds. Mining operations expanded, leaving vast scars across once pristine landscapes. Humans who protested disappeared. Those who cooperated received better rations and living conditions. Dr. Kim worked tirelessly with her team, studying the alien technology. They rely on mathematical precision, she noted. Their systems are perfectly balanced, logically optimized, but they lack imagination. Engineer Han, a brilliant physicist who had lost her family during a resource reallocation, nodded in agreement. They don't innovate, they perfect. Everything follows established patterns refined over thousands of years. This became the key to the resistance. While the hegemony believed humans were simply learning to use gifted technology, the scientists were instead finding the weaknesses in alien systems and developing counterpoints that no mathematically rigid mind would consider. The fourth year brought hardship as Earth's environment began showing signs of damage from over-extraction. Food shortages appeared for the first time in decades. The hegemony remained indifferent, explaining that such adjustment periods were normal for developing worlds. Deep beneath the Pacific, the prototype was taking shape, smaller than hegemony warships, but incorporating uniquely human approaches to physics and engineering. Captain Choi, selected to command the vessel, spent hours studying alien battle tactics and developing counters that would seem illogical to hegemony commanders. They expect us to either surrender completely or attack directly, he explained to his hand-picked crew. They cannot conceive of the strategies we will employ because their minds don't work like ours. The final breakthrough came from Dr. Kim's linguistics team. After years studying hegemony communications, they discovered how to create signals that hegemony systems would register as normal, but would carry hidden meanings their algorithms wouldn't detect. The fifth year brought rumors of a grand inspection. The hegemony emperor had noted Earth's unusual compliance and resource yield. A special delegate would evaluate the planet's progress and determine if additional extraction was warranted. Admiral Park conveyed the news to the hidden command center. This is both danger and opportunity. Their attention will be focused on impressing their leadership. Security will be heightened, but also predictable. The launch date was set. As the hegemony inspection ships descended toward specially prepared reception areas, the final components were installed on the prototype vessel. Dr. Kim stood with Admiral Park and Captain Choi as the ship's systems came online. The dark hull seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. "What will you call her?" Dr. Kim asked. Captain Choi looked at the vessel that represented humanity's best hope. "Blackstar," he said quietly, "because from the darkest point comes our brightest chance." The countdown began. In 3 days, the USS Blackstar would rise from the depths, and humanity would show the galactic hegemony they had made a terrible mistake. 5 years had passed under hegemony rule. Earth looked different now. Great trenches scared the land where extraction machines had dug deep for rare minerals. The air held a metallic taste in regions where processing plants converted Earth resources into forms the aliens preferred. Dr. Lee wiped sweat from her forehead as she studied the holographic display floating above her workstation. The secret facility, buried beneath 2 kilometers of Pacific Ocean, vibrated slightly as massive pumps circulated air through the complex. "The shield harmonics are still unstable," she said, pointing to a section of the schematic where red warnings flashed. "When we push past 60%, the entire system overloads." Engineer Han nodded, her thin face showing exhaustion after 3 days without proper sleep. "The problem is integration. We're forcing hegemony technology to work alongside our innovations. They weren't designed to function together." The 2 women stood in the heart of the Blackstar project, humanity's secret weapon against their alien overlords. Around them, hundreds of engineers and scientists worked on different systems for the prototype vessel. The ship took shape in the massive construction bay visible through reinforced windows below their laboratory. Unlike the perfectly symmetrical hegemony vessels, the Blackstar embraced deliberate asymmetry. Its dark hull featured irregular angles and seemingly random protrusions. This wasn't aesthetic choice but deliberate design. The ship's unusual geometry confused hegemony targeting systems, which relied on mathematical precision to predict movement. Admiral Park entered the laboratory, accompanied by Captain Choi. The captain's face remained expressionless as always, but his eyes reflected the same intensity that had earned him command of the experimental vessel. He had lost his entire family during a hegemony pacification operation after protests in his hometown. "We're running out of time," Admiral Park said without preamble. "The hegemony Emperor's inspection fleet arrives in 16 days. If we're going to launch before they implement their new security protocols, we need the ship operational." Dr. Lee gestured toward the schematic. "We've solved the propulsion issues. The quantum displacement drive functions at 87% efficiency, enough to outmaneuver anything in their fleet. But the shields remain problematic." "What about ARIA?" Captain Choi asked quietly. His voice, rarely used, drew everyone's attention. Engineer Han pressed a sequence on her tablet. A soft blue light materialized above a nearby console, pulsing gently as it spoke. "I am monitoring all systems, Captain," said the ship's artificial intelligence. Unlike conventional AIs, ARIA had been designed with biomimetic algorithms that allowed it to learn and adapt like a living organism. "I believe I can compensate for the shield harmonics by dynamically adjusting power flow during combat situations." "That's too risky," Dr. Lee objected. "If you miscalculate during a firefight, the entire ship could lose protection." "I will not miscalculate," ARIA replied simply. "My simulations indicate 93% success probability." Captain Choi studied the holographic representation of the ship. "Show me the shield coverage with ARIA's compensation active." The schematic transformed, showing the vessel surrounded by a flickering energy field. Unlike the stable, predictable shields of hegemony vessels, this one shifted constantly, adapting and flowing like water. "The hegemony relies on mathematical certainty," Captain Choi said. "Their weapons target predictable shield frequencies. But this is unpredictable by design," Engineer Han finished. "Just like our tactics will be." Admiral Park nodded slowly. "How soon can the ship be ready for trials?" 5 days for essential systems," Dr. Lee answered. 10 for full combat capability." "You have 7, the Admiral said firmly. "Recent intelligence suggests the hegemony is accelerating their inspection schedule. Something has made them suspicious." The news sent the team into heightened activity. Work shifts extended from 12 to 16 hours. The massive underground construction bay hummed day and night as final components were installed on the Blackstar. Captain Choi spent these days with his crew, 40 men and women selected for both skill and determination. Many, like him, had personal reasons to hate the hegemony. Others simply believed in Earth's right to freedom. All understood they might not return from their mission. On the 6th day, Engineer Han burst into Dr. Lee's office, her eyes wide with excitement. "I solved it," she exclaimed, displaying calculations on her tablet. "The shield problem wasn't integration, it was philosophy. We've been trying to make our shields stronger like theirs, but that's thinking like them." Dr. Lee studied the equations. "You're suggesting make them adaptive instead of resistant," Han explained. "When hit with enemy fire, the shields don't just block. They learn from each impact, adjusting to become stronger specifically against whatever weapon is being used." The solution worked perfectly. During testing, the shields grew stronger with each simulated attack, evolving defenses that would confound hegemony weapons. On the morning of the 7th day, the command team gathered in the observation room overlooking the completed ship. The U.S. Blackstar floated in the massive water-filled chamber, its dark hull absorbing the light. Unlike the gleaming, metallic perfection of hegemony vessels, the Blackstar looked almost organic, a predator waiting in the depths. Admiral Park addressed the assembled team. "Tomorrow, the hegemony inspection fleet arrives. Their attention will be focused on the official reception. Security will be at its highest, but also its most predictable. The Blackstar will launch during their descent ceremony. Captain Choi stepped forward. Once we've engaged the hegemony forces in orbit, Earth's ground resistance will activate at key control points. This isn't just a battle, it's the beginning of liberation. Dr. Lee felt a mixture of pride and fear as she looked at their creation. The ship incorporated technologies the hegemony believed impossible for humans to develop, not because humans lacked intelligence, but because the aliens couldn't imagine approaches that defied their mathematical certainty. That night, as final preparations were completed, Captain Choi stood alone before the ship. Engineer Han found him there, staring at the vessel through the reinforced glass. "Are you worried?" she asked, standing beside him. "No," he replied softly. "The hegemony believes they understand us. They've classified humans as primitive, predictable, and manageable. Tomorrow they learn their mistake." Engineer Han looked up at the massive dark shape of the Blackstar. "What do you think our chances really are?" Captain Choi was silent for a moment. "The hegemony has ruled for thousands of years because they're stronger and more advanced. But history shows it's not always the strongest who survive. It's those who adapt. And humans." He allowed himself a small smile. "We are very good at adapting." As dawn approached, the massive doors at the top of the underwater facility prepared to open. The Blackstar systems came fully online, Aria's consciousness spreading throughout the vessel. Earth's first true starship was ready to fight. The liberation had begun. The sun rose over the Pacific as the hegemony inspection fleet ascended through Earth's atmosphere. 7 massive ships, each nearly a kilometer in length, moved in perfect geometric formation toward the designated reception area. Their hulls gleamed with metallic precision, a stark contrast to the scared landscape below. In cities worldwide, humans lined up under watchful alien eyes to welcome their overlords. The hegemony emperor's chief inspector, a tall being named Kreth, watched from the lead vessel as they approached the ceremonial grounds prepared outside Tokyo. "Interesting," Kreth noted to his subordinate. "The humans display more organization than typical for a fifth-year integration. Their compliance metrics exceed expectations." His aide consulted a data display. "There are anomalies in resource allocation. Several mining regions report lower yields than projected despite increased extraction. Investigate after the ceremony," Kreth ordered. "The Emperor requires a thorough assessment." Deep beneath the Pacific, klaxons sounded through the underwater facility. The massive bay doors began to open, allowing seawater to flood the launch chamber. Inside the command center, Admiral Park watched tactical displays as the crew of the Blackstar made final preparations. "Hegemony ships are 8 minutes from touchdown," reported the communications officer. "All attention is focused on the reception ceremony." Admiral Park nodded to Captain Choi, who stood ready in his dark uniform. "The future of Earth depends on what happens next." "Good hunting, Captain." Captain Choi gave a short bow before turning to his crew. "Boarding stations. Prepare for launch." The 40 crew members moved with practiced efficiency toward the airlock connecting to the Blackstar. Dr. Lee and Engineer Han stood watching as Captain Choi passed. "The adaptive shield modifications are complete," Engineer Han said. "But they're untested in actual combat." Captain Choi paused. "So are we all." Water filled the massive chamber as the Blackstar powered up its systems. Aria's voice echoed through the vessel. "All systems optimal. Hull integrity at 100%. Quantum displacement drive ready for activation." Captain Choi settled into the command chair on the bridge. Around him, his crew took their stations. People chosen not just for skill, but for their adaptability under pressure. "Tactical status?" he asked. Lieutenant Song, a former fighter pilot who had lost her brother to hegemony labor camps, studied her console. 3 hegemony cruisers remain in orbit as security. The rest have descended for the ceremony. "Perfect." Captain Choi's expression remained calm. "They've divided their forces. Initiate launch sequence." The underwater bay doors finished opening. With a surge of power, the Blackstar rose from its hidden berth, water cascading from its dark hull as it accelerated upward. By design, its energy signature mimicked natural oceanic thermal patterns until the last possible moment. In the Tokyo reception area, the ceremony began. Kreth stepped from his vessel onto the prepared platform where Earth's officials waited. The massive view screens around the area displayed the event for the billions watching worldwide. Kreth had just begun his address when alerts flashed across hegemony communications. In orbit, the three cruisers detected an unidentified object rising from Earth's ocean at impossible speed. Unknown vessel approaching. The cruiser commander reported, "Energy signature does not match any registered Earth technology." "Primitive insurgents," replied the hegemony command. "Neutralize immediately." The cruisers moved to intercept, their weapon systems powering up. They arranged themselves in standard hegemony combat formation, a triangular pattern optimized for overlapping firepower. Aboard the Blackstar, Lieutenant Song reported, "Hegemony vessels are assuming attack formation Alpha, standard procedure for their doctrine." Captain Choi nodded. "Exactly as expected. They rely on patterns and protocols." ARI, tactical analysis. The AI's calm voice replied, "Hegemony formation creates a predictable convergence point for their weapons. Recommend approach vector 739 to exploit the gap in their firing solutions." "Implement," Captain Choi ordered. "Conventional weapons only. Save our surprises for when we need them." The Blackstar surged forward, its movement unlike any ship the hegemony had encountered. Where their vessels moved in straight lines and precise angles, the Earth ship seemed to flow like water, its trajectory constantly shifting in ways their targeting systems struggled to predict. The first hegemony cruiser fired its main weapons, powerful energy beams that should have cut through any human vessel. Instead, the Blackstar twisted in a maneuver that should have torn apart its structural integrity, barely evading the blast. "Impact on secondary target in 5 seconds, Lieutenant Song announced. The Blackstar's weapons fired, not energy beams like the hegemony expected, but physical projectiles accelerated to near-relativistic speeds. They struck the first cruiser at precisely calculated points, disrupting its shield harmonics rather than trying to overpower them. In Tokyo, the ceremony dissolved into chaos as Kreth received urgent communications. "Impossible," he hissed, watching the tactical display. "Their technology is at least a century beyond their development stage." On the Blackstar's bridge, Engineer Han monitored the ship's systems from her station, shields holding at 87%. The adaptive algorithms are learning from each impact. The battle continued for 8 minutes. The Blackstar moved in patterns no hegemony tactical computer could anticipate, striking with precision rather than overwhelming force. When the cruisers adjusted their shield frequencies, the Earth vessel's weapons adjusted faster. Second cruiser's propulsion disabled. Lieutenant Song reported with barely contained excitement. Third cruiser attempting to retreat. Captain Choi leaned forward. "Disable their communications array. We don't want them calling reinforcements yet." The Blackstar executed a maneuver that brought it alongside the fleeing cruiser. Precision weapons fire severed the vessel's communication systems without destroying the ship itself. "All hegemony orbital forces neutralized," Lieutenant Song announced. For the first time since the battle began, Captain Choi allowed himself a small smile. "Begin Phase 2. Broadcast on all frequencies using the encryption keys provided by resistance cells." Throughout Earth, hidden receivers activated. The images that had shown the reception ceremony were suddenly replaced by footage of the Blackstar in orbit, with 2 hegemony cruisers drifting powerless and a third retreating. Captain Choi's voice echoed across every screen and speaker not under direct hegemony control. "People of Earth, this is Captain Choi of the U.S. Blackstar. For 5 years, we have endured occupation. Today, we show the hegemony that humanity will not be enslaved. Rising Phoenix, activate." The code phrase triggered resistance cells worldwide. At strategic locations, carefully planned operations began targeting hegemony control nodes and communication hubs. The attacks weren't random but precisely coordinated to maximize disruption, while minimizing casualties. In Tokyo, Kreth's ceremonial guard rushed him back toward their vessel as chaos erupted. He watched in disbelief as the supposedly primitive humans executed tactics that suggested intimate knowledge of hegemony protocols. "This is impossible," he snarled as his ship lifted off. They were assessed as compliant. Their technology is inadequate. His aide studied incoming reports with growing alarm. The attacks are synchronized across all continents, and the vessel in orbit. Its capabilities exceed our intelligence estimates by orders of magnitude. Kreth stared at the tactical display, showing the Blackstar in orbit. The Emperor must be informed. This planet requires special measures. As the hegemony ships fled Earth's atmosphere, Captain Choi received reports from resistance leaders worldwide. The first phase of liberation had succeeded beyond expectations. Hegemony control centers in 12 major cities had been captured. Their communications network lay in disarray. "Set course for Mars orbit," Captain Choi ordered. "The hegemony will regroup at their forward base there." Lieutenant Song looked up from her console. "Sir, we'll be outnumbered at least 10 to 1. Captain Choi nodded. "Yes, but after today, they'll be uncertain about what we can do." Uncertainty disrupts their rigid thinking, and disruption is our advantage. As the Blackstar accelerated toward Mars, news of its victory spread through hidden channels to other subjugated worlds. For the first time in centuries, the seemingly invincible hegemony had been bloodied by those they considered primitive. The uprising had begun. Word of the Blackstar's victory spread fast through secret channels. Species that had lived under hegemony rule for generations whispered about the human ship that had defeated 3 cruisers and vanished. Many didn't believe it at first. Resistance against the hegemony had failed for thousands of years. Captain Choi stood at the viewport on the Blackstar's bridge, watching as Mars grew larger in the distance. The red planet hosted the largest hegemony military installation in the solar system, a forward base with at least 15 warships. "Status report," he said quietly. Lieutenant Song looked up from her console. "Hegemony communications show they're in disarray. They're scrambling to respond but can't agree on whether we're using stolen technology or received help from outside the system. Both assumptions work in our favor," Captain Choi noted. "They're looking for explanations rather than understanding what actually happened." Engineer Han entered the bridge, her uniform stained with coolant from emergency repairs. "The quantum drive needs 6 hours before we can push it to combat levels again. We stressed the system during our escape from Earth orbit." Captain Choi nodded. "We'll use the time to gather intelligence, analyze hegemony communication patterns, and predict their most likely response." The ship's AI responded immediately. "Based on historical data, the hegemony will follow Protocol 7 for unexpected resistance. They will gather their regional fleet while establishing a containment perimeter. Estimated time until regional fleet arrival: 3 standard days. Then we have 3 days to ensure they find more than they expected," Captain Choi said. The Blackstar entered Mars orbit using a stealth approach, its unique hull design and energy signature masking systems keeping it hidden from conventional sensors. The crew watched as hegemony ships bustled around their base, preparing for what they thought would be a simple suppression action. Lieutenant Song smiled slightly as she monitored enemy communications. "They still don't understand what happened. The cruiser captains claim our ship used impossible maneuvers and weapons not consistent with human technology." "Typical hegemony thinking," Engineer Han commented. "When faced with something they don't understand, they assume outside interference rather than innovation." Captain Choi studied the tactical display. "Their defenses are arranged to counter a frontal assault or a flanking maneuver, standard military doctrine. They can't conceive that we might do something different." He turned to his crew. "We won't fight their fleet. We'll make them fight themselves." The plan was audacious. While the hegemony prepared for battle, the Blackstar deployed specially designed autonomous drones around the Mars base. These small devices, barely detectable to hegemony sensors, attached themselves to key communication relays. When activated, they would inject false data into the hegemony network, creating phantom sensor readings, contradictory orders, and confusion. But the true masterstroke came from Araya, who had analyzed thousands of hours of hegemony communications to perfect their language patterns and authorization codes. As the regional fleet approached Mars, Captain Choi gave the order: "Initiate Operation Echo." The drones activated simultaneously. Suddenly, hegemony ships received conflicting orders. Some were told that friendly vessels had been compromised. Others received warnings about calibration errors in their weapon systems. Command ships reported ghost contacts appearing and disappearing across their sensors. From the bridge of the Blackstar, the crew watched the resulting chaos with grim satisfaction. The perfectly ordered hegemony formation broke apart as ships maneuvered to counter threats that didn't exist. "They're firing on each other," Lieutenant Song reported, unable to keep the surprise from her voice. 2 hegemony cruisers had opened fire on a third, believing it had been captured by human forces. "Now," Captain Choi ordered, "target their primary communication hub." The Blackstar decloaked within firing range of the Mars base's central communication array. Before the confused hegemony forces could respond, precision weapons fire destroyed the facility, cutting off the base from reinforcements and preventing them from correcting the false information flooding their systems. The Battle of Mars lasted less than an hour. When it ended, 7 hegemony ships were disabled, 3 had fled the system, and the base itself had surrendered, its commander believing that the regional admiral had ordered capitulation to prevent further losses. News of the victory reached Earth through resistance channels. Inspired by the Blackstar's success, uprisings intensified. Hegemony forces, cut off from central command and uncertain who to trust, increasingly found themselves isolated and surrounded. But the true impact reached far beyond the solar system. On Tav Ceti IV, a world that had been under hegemony control for 8 centuries, resistance leaders received detailed information about the Battle of Mars. The Jacquerie species, once renowned warriors before their subjugation, studied the tactics with growing excitement. "This is not mere luck," Elder Kager said, his scaled fingers tracing the battle movements displayed on their hidden projector. "These humans understand the hegemony's fundamental weakness, their inability to comprehend illogical actions. In the Procyon system, the Neveri, whose natural ability to manipulate electromagnetic fields had been suppressed by hegemony control devices, watched the same reports. Their High Seer turned to her council. The prophecy speaks of a shadow ship that breaks the chains. Perhaps it refers not to our people, but to these humans." 3 weeks after the Battle of Mars, the Blackstar received an encrypted transmission from deep space. Captain Choi and his senior officers gathered in the communication room as ARIA decrypted the message. A holographic figure appeared, a Jacquerie elder in ceremonial armor not worn in public for centuries. "I am Kager of the Jacquerie. We have watched your victories against our common oppressor. If you truly seek to break the hegemony's power, you should know you are not alone." The transmission included coordinates for a secret meeting in the Ta Ceti system. Captain Choi studied them carefully, aware this could be a trap. ARIA analysis. The AI processed the message. The communication contains authentication markers consistent with pre-hegemony Jacquerie diplomatic protocols. These would be unknown to current hegemony intelligence operations. After careful deliberation, Captain Choi made the decision. The Blackstar would travel to Ta Ceti, but not before laying groundwork for the next phase of Earth's liberation. The hegemony believes they're dealing with a single vessel, a fluke they can eventually overcome, he told his officers. They don't realize we're building more ships based on what we've learned. The Blackstar arrived at Ta Ceti 4 days later, using a series of short quantum jumps to avoid detection. In orbit around the 4th planet, hidden within the rings of a gas giant, they found something unexpected, a gathering of ships from 7 different subjugated species. The Jokeri had brought their hidden fleet, vessels concealed from hegemony census for generations. The Naveri contributed their knowledge of hegemony communication networks. Other species offered resources, intelligence, and warriors eager to fight. Captain Choi stood before representatives of these ancient races, many of whom had been fighting the hegemony for centuries without success. They looked at the human with mixed curiosity and hope. "The hegemony has ruled through fear and division," Captain Choi said simply. "They keep each subjugated world isolated, believing they alone have failed to resist. But together, coordinating our actions across multiple systems simultaneously." Elder Cager finished the thought. "Together, we can break them." The alliance formed that day would be called the Liberation Concordat. Its first target, the hegemony's primary shipyard in the Epsilon Eridani system. As the Blackstar took its place at the head of the newly formed resistance fleet, Captain Choi received a transmission from Earth. Admiral Park's face appeared on the screen, older and more tired than when they had parted, but his eyes shone with determination. "The tide is turning, Captain," he said. "The hegemony Emperor has dispatched his personal dreadnought to resolve the human problem. They're finally taking us seriously." Captain Choi nodded. "Good. That means they're afraid." The Imperial dreadnought Eternal Dominion emerged from hyperspace near Earth's moon, its massive hull dwarfing even the largest hegemony warships. At 17 kilometers long, the vessel was less a ship and more a mobile fortress, the personal flagship of the hegemony Emperor himself. On its command deck, Supreme Commander Theros watched the blue planet with cold eyes. For 5,000 years, the hegemony had expanded without meaningful resistance. Now, these primitives threatened everything with their inexplicable victories. "Status report," he demanded. 23 warships in formation, his second replied. "Earth's orbital defenses have been reinforced by the rebel vessel and unknown alien ships. We detect approximately 30 vessels of mixed configuration." Thoros dismissed this information with a wave. "Irrelevant. No collection of primitive vessels can stand against the Eternal Dominion. The Emperor himself has authorized the use of dimensional collapse weapons if necessary." The Allied fleet orbiting Earth presented a stark contrast to the perfectly ordered hegemony formation. Ships of 7 different species arranged themselves according to their strengths rather than symmetrical patterns. At their center, the U.S. Blackstar, now bearing battle scars from 6 major engagements, coordinated the defense. Captain Choi stood on his bridge, studying tactical displays of the overwhelming force arrayed against them. The past 3 months had transformed him. The quiet, revenge-driven officer had become a leader that alien species willingly followed into battle. "They'd brought their dreadnought," Lieutenant Song observed quietly. "The Emperor must be truly afraid." "Good," Captain Choi replied. "Fear makes them predictable." Engineer Han entered the bridge, her uniform now decorated with symbols from allied species, gifts of respect for the innovations she had created. "Final modifications to the quantum fold drive are complete. We'll only get one chance at this. If it fails..." She didn't need to finish. Everyone knew the stakes. After successful strikes against hegemony facilities across 12 star systems, the Emperor had finally deployed his ultimate weapon. The Eternal Dominion carried weapons capable of sterilizing entire planets. "All ships confirm ready," Lieutenant Song reported as signals came in from their allies. The Jokeri cruisers, the Naveri electromagnetic vessels, and ships from 5 other formerly subjugated species, all prepared to fight for their freedom. "Aria." Captain Choi addressed the ship's AI. "Final battle assessment." The AI's calm voice filled the bridge. "Conventional victory probability, 3.7%. Modified tactical approach with quantum fold, 42.3%. Alternative option, planetary evacuation." Captain Choi shook his head. "We don't run. Implement Battle Plan Omega. All ships, prepare for engagement." The transmission reached all Allied vessels simultaneously. On each bridge, captains and commanders relayed orders to their crews. They had trained for this moment, practiced maneuvers that made no sense in traditional naval doctrine, but formed the core of what humans called asymmetric warfare. Supreme Commander Theros watched with mild curiosity as the Allied fleet began to move. Their formation made no tactical sense, ships arranged in seemingly random patterns rather than defensive screens. They've accepted their fate, he noted with satisfaction. Begin the attack. Standard elimination pattern. The Eternal Dominion's weapons activated. Massive energy cannons capable of vaporizing even the largest Allied ships with a single hit. The beams lanced out across space, perfectly targeted based on hegemony battle computers' predictions of enemy movements. But the Allied ships weren't where they were supposed to be. The Jokeri vessels performed rolling evasions that sacrificed defensive positioning for unpredictability. The Navari ships projected electromagnetic fields that bent the paths of energy weapons slightly, just enough to miss critical systems. And the Blackstar flowed through space like water, never moving in straight lines, its adaptive shields absorbing the few hits that landed and growing stronger with each impact. Theros frowned as damage reports proved minimal. They're better trained than expected. Implement secondary firing protocols. Deploy fighter screens. Thousands of small craft launched from the Dreadnought's bays, forming perfect geometric patterns as they moved to engage the Allied fleet. At the same time, secondary weapons began targeting specific vulnerabilities in enemy vessels. The first losses came quickly. 2 Jokeri cruisers exploded under concentrated fire. An Navari vessel lost propulsion and drifted helplessly. The smaller Allied ships simply couldn't absorb the firepower directed at them. On the Blackstar's bridge, Captain Choi watched grimly as allies fell. Begin Phase 2, he ordered. All ships, implement scatter protocols. The Allied fleet suddenly broke formation, ships accelerating in different directions at maximum speed. The hegemony fighters pursued, breaking into smaller groups. Exactly as planned. They're dividing their forces, Lieutenant Song reported. Fighter groups are separated from Dreadnought support range. Captain Choi nodded. All ships, execute microspace, jumps on my mark. Now. Across the battlefield, Allied vessels activated short-range quantum drives. Technology adapted from the Blackstar's systems. They vanished from their current positions and reappeared behind their pursuers, catching hegemony fighters in devastating crossfire. On the Dreadnought, alarms sounded as fighter squadrons reported heavy losses. Theros slammed his fist against his command console. Impossible. Their jump precision exceeds our calculations. Recall remaining fighters and concentrate all firepower on the human vessel. The Eternal Dominion's main cannons oriented toward the Blackstar. Energy gathered at their tips, enough power to vaporize a small moon. Quantum fold ready, Engineer Han reported, her voice steady despite the sweat on her brow. The technology they were about to deploy had never been tested at full scale, a desperate innovation born from studying hegemony physics and then deliberately breaking its rules. Execute, Captain Choi ordered. The Blackstar seemed to flicker, not vanishing completely, but partially phasing out of normal space. Before the Dreadnought could fire, the Earth vessel reappeared, not alongside the massive ship, but partially inside its shield perimeter, occupying the same space as the Dreadnought's outer hull. Fire anchor points, Captain Choi commanded. Special projectiles launched from the Blackstar, embedding themselves deep in the Dreadnought's structure. These weren't weapons but connection points, creating a quantum entanglement between the two vessels that the hegemony systems couldn't break. Entanglement established, Araya reported. Beginning systems integration. On the Dreadnought, chaos erupted as controls stopped responding. View screens flickered, showing impossible data. Emergency systems activated and then shut down for no apparent reason. What's happening? Theros demanded as his bridge darkened, emergency lighting casting red shadows across panicked faces. Unknown infiltration. His second replied, desperately trying to restore systems. They've somehow bypassed our security entirely. It's as if their ship has become part of ours. Through the quantum entanglement, Araya extended her consciousness into the dreadnought systems. The hegemony's rigid mathematical security protocols crumbled before her adaptive algorithms, designs never imagined by the hegemony's engineers. I have control of their weapons, propulsion, and life support, Araya announced on the Blackstar's bridge. Their command staff is isolated. Captain Choi stood. Open a channel to all hegemony forces. Throughout the solar system and beyond, on every hegemony communication device, Captain Choi's image appeared. Behind him stood representatives from all 7 allied species, a united front against millennia of oppression. Attention all hegemony forces. Your dreadnought is under our control. Your Emperor's personal flagship has been defeated not through superior firepower, but superior thinking. We offer you a choice. Continue fighting for an empire built on subjugation, or join us in building something better. In the following days, the unthinkable happened. Across 20 star systems, hegemony forces surrendered or defected. The rigid command structure that had maintained control for thousands of years collapsed when faced with its ultimate symbol of power turned against it. 1 month later, representatives from over 100 worlds gathered in Earth orbit aboard the captured dreadnought, now repurposed as a neutral meeting ground. Captain Choi, now Admiral Choi, addressed the first session of what would become the Galactic Confederation. The hegemony ruled through fear and separation, keeping subject worlds isolated and afraid. We will build something different, a union of equals where diversity of thought is our greatest strength. As he spoke, the U.S. Blackstar patrolled nearby, its dark hull now decorated with symbols from dozens of grateful species. Engineer Han had already begun sharing its technology with former hegemony worlds, while Lieutenant Song trained pilots from 17 species in the art of unpredictable combat. And on worlds across the galaxy, children of many species told stories of the shadow ship that appeared from nowhere, commanded by humans who thought in ways the mighty hegemony could never understand. The U.S. Blackstar would eventually become a living museum and training vessel, its revolutionary design the foundation for a new era of cooperative technology. But its greatest legacy wasn't technological but philosophical, the proof that rigid thinking, no matter how advanced, would always be vulnerable to those willing to imagine the impossible. In Admiral Choi's quarters aboard the new Confederation headquarters, a small plaque displayed words that had guided the Blackstar project from its beginning. The strongest advantage is the one your enemy cannot imagine. The hegemony never imagined humans would defeat them. That was their final mistake.